And welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert. Tonight, at this very hour, a very deep and dark cloud is now hovering over the Obama White House as a result of America's crisis in confidence in the 44th president of the United States. Now, why? Because time and again, Barack Obama has demonstrated his ability and his willingness to routinely deceive you, the American people. Why? In order to advance his political ideology. And tonight, we're going to lay out very clearly the latest and greatest examples of deception being orchestrated by this administration. And we begin with the great Obamacare hoax. Now, over the course of the last week, a series of videos have surfaced of Obamacare architect Hannity Gruber repeatedly admitting that lies were strategically used by Democrats to ram through the Affordable Care Act through Congress. Watch this.
If you had a law which said healthy people are going to pay in, it made explicit that healthy people pay in and sick people get money, it would not have passed. Okay, just like the lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to get anything to pass. They were both in that passed. The American voter is too stupid to understand the difference.
It's a very clever, basically exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter.
I don't think it's that the voters in Florida don't care about the low-income uninsured. I think they're just misinformed.
Now, statements like those should be condemned by our representatives in Washington, not condoned. Now, unfortunately, for nearly a decade, top Democrats have praised the work of Hannity Gruber. Let's take a look at this.
You've already drawn some of the brightest minds from academia and policy circles. Many of them I've stolen ideas from liberally, people ranging from Robert Gordon to Austin Goolsbee, John Gruber.
Our bill brings down rates. I don't know if you have seen Hannity Gruber of MIT's analysis.
Hannity Gruber is one of the most respected economists in the world.
That was then, but now the videos that have surfaced, Gruber calling you, the American people, stupid. Well, Democrats, they're quickly changing their tune. I'm no doctor, but this looks like a case of political amnesia. Take a look.
You could talk to Dr. Gruber about what he said, but I don't have a comment about his comments.
I don't know who he is. He didn't help write our bill.
The fact that some advisor who never worked on our staff expressed an opinion that I completely disagree with in terms of the voters is no reflection on the actual process that was run.
Mr. President, Hannity Gruber, he wasn't just some advisor. He's been at the White House at least 19 times in recent years, meeting with your top aides, and even sat down face-to-face with you in the Oval Office back in 2009 for over 4 hours. And since then, he has been paid by the taxpayers $500,000 for his services. So I think we deserve to know what was discussed at those meetings. Now, did you talk about the stupidity of the American voters? Did you plan on how to deceive the public into supporting your bill? Well, maybe he's the one who helped you come up with these infamous broken promises.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. And if you do have health insurance, we'll help make sure that your insurance is more affordable and more secure. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan.
Now, the reason why these Gruber tapes are so important is that they prove once and for all that the great American Obamacare hoax was sold on a foundation of lies. And that brings me to the latest item on the president's agenda. That's his plan to implement executive amnesty for illegal immigrants in this country. Now, while the details of the scheme are not yet clear, what we do know is that even Barack Obama once recognized that taking such an action would amount to an unconstitutional abuse of power. Take a look.
The notion that I can just suspend deportations through executive order, that's just not the case.
Now, I know some people want me to bypass Congress and change the laws on my own, but that's not how our system works.
The problem is that, I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. If, in fact, I could solve all these problems without passing laws in Congress, then I would do so. I cannot ignore those laws any more than I could ignore any of the other laws that are on the books. Until Congress passes a new law, then I am constrained in terms of what I'm able to do.
So it looks like we can now soon add the issue of amnesty to the long list of lies told by the president. Now, first, remember there was the stimulus, those bogus shovel-ready jobs that weren't so shovel-ready. Then there was Obamacare, Fast and Furious, the IRS scandal, Benghazi, a spontaneous demonstration based on a YouTube video, and on and on. Now, unfortunately, for people like the president and Jonathan Gruber, voters, they're far from stupid. Now, we know a tax when we see one. We know a lie when we hear one. Here with reaction, the original architect, Fox News contributor Karl Rove. How are you, sir?
Fabulous.
Good to see you. What do you make of these lies?
Well, look, it is evidence, as you say, what we knew all along. This whole Affordable Care Act was sold to the American people on a series of lies that at the time the president and his people knew were not true. I mean, the Affordable Care Act, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. The crux of the Affordable Care Act is that the president thought most health insurance policies are inadequate and they needed to be canceled. If you like your doctor, you're going to keep your doctor. They knew that was not true. The Affordable Care Act is based on the premise that American people have too many choices in health care. In order to reduce health care costs, you have to be limited in who you can go see, and so on and so forth. Everything about this law.
Listen to what Gruber says when he talks about it was written in such a tortured way. Doesn't that really mean we meant to manipulate the CBO?
Did.
We meant to manipulate the American people.
Exactly right. In fact, we had also, as a participant in this, John Kerry. Remember, the tortured thing is how do we avoid taxing the so-called Cadillac plans, these very expensive health care plans generally enjoyed by members of organized labor, and how do we avoid being attacked by labor unions for taxing their plans? We claim we're not taxing the plans, we're simply taxing the insurance companies, and the idea was John Kerry's. This drama didn't include just one academic at MIT. It included senators. It included the President of the United States. It included his top aides and advisors. It included the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And they went out and told us things that they knew were not true. And why? Because somebody in the White House said, in order to sell this, we got to spin the American people.
And it was also, they admitted and acknowledged that this would be a massive transfer of wealth from the healthy to the sick, the elderly, and the uninsured.
Right. And,
if they were
from
honest,
the young to the old.
Yeah.
That's one of the more pernicious things about it. Community rating.
Okay.
Age-rated bans. I mean, these
but then they admit if they didn't lie, they knew it wouldn't have passed.
Exactly.
So what recourse do Republicans have? There's a big struggle, battle in terms of strategically how to deal with this. Defunding seems to be, in my view, the constitutional weapon that they have at their avail. How would you go about it? Short-term CR into the new Congress?
Yeah, look, I worry about us trying to get things done when we got 232. We hold 233 seats, but I think there's one vacancy. I feel better about doing it in the new year. And look, I think that we ought to do two things. We ought to systematically take parts of the Affordable Care Act, particularly things that Democrats will vote for, and run them through in order to start blowing out parts of the Affordable Care Act. For example, saying that the definition of full-time work is 40 hours a week, not 30 hours a week, will save a lot of people who work in restaurants and the hospitality industry and work 35 or 36 hours a week and get tips. It'll keep them from being cut back to 29 hours a week, and that'll hurt and undermine the Affordable Care Act. We ought to. There are a whole series of changes.
Medical device tax.
Medical device tax ought to be another one. And look, there are lots of them, and we also ought to couple them, in my opinion, with reforms that we advocate and support. Like we ought to say small businesses ought to be able to pool their risk and get the same discounts big boys get. We ought to say we ought to allow across state lines. We ought to look at whatever we can to both undermine the Affordable Care Act and to put patient-centered conservative reforms in place.
To me, it's important in principle, especially with the new Congress, that they vote to a full repeal, even though we know the president won't sign it.
Look, let's put everybody on record. Let's put everybody on record. Let's put everybody on record. The House will pass it. We'll get some Democrats to vote for it. It'll go to the Senate. I'm still not certain where I see, we'll have 54 Republicans voting to repeal it. I'm not certain where I see many Democrats doing it, but let's put everybody on the record. And if we do come up with 6 Democrats to vote with us,
okay.
Or if we can do it under reconciliation and send it directly to the president next April or May.
All right, let's move on to the immigration issue, because the president seems like he's going forward with executive amnesty. You heard the tape. That's only a small portion.
Oh no,
the number of times.
The record is enormous on this. And look, to me, look, this is a political gesture by the president. Here's the test. The Wall Street Journal had a great editorial the other day. There's a little-known office inside the Department of Justice called the Office of Legal Counsel, OLC. It's where you put your best constitutional scholars, and the White House traditionally asks on major questions like this.
No, they went to Eric Holder.
No, and look, they haven't even gone to Eric Holder. Eric Holder would be obligated not to issue the opinion, but to refer it to the OLC.
I read that Eric Holder came up with a plan with the president on how to do this.
But he didn't come up with it in his official responsibility as the Attorney General. He came up with it, if he did, as the political advisor of the president, which the Attorney General should not be.
All right, when you look at the magnitude of keep your plan, keep your doctor, save money, and again, back in...
Won't add to the deficit.
Don't add to the deficit.
Never going to tax anybody who makes $250,000.
All of those things.
Not going to interfere between you and your doctor.
This is an orchestrated propaganda campaign, basically, to manipulate the American people, manipulate the CBO. What is the recourse they have on that, and what is the best way the Republicans deal with this? It seems the president wants a showdown on shutting down the government again.
Well, we shouldn't give him that. What we ought to do is make him be in a place where he has to constantly be vetoing, if he wants to, appropriations bills and forcing Democrats to sustain his veto. Because, look, there are going to be a lot of Democrats who say, you know what, the Republicans are going to try and rein in this thing or that thing on the Affordable Care Act. We agree that we shouldn't be implementing that part of the act. We shouldn't be doing the medical device tax.
They'll be fighting among themselves.
They'll be fighting among themselves. And second of all, there are going to be Democrats who say, yeah, count on me. You mark my word. We come up with a measure to say that the definition of a full-time work week is 40 hours a week. I bet you there are 2/3 or more of the Senate who end up voting for that bill, which means a lot of Democrats end up voting for it.
All right, Carl Rowe.
Thank you,
Great
sir.
analysis, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Coming up.